Hi, Mark Robertson back with you. Normally at this time I would say welcome to my site and then I would name it, but today's show is going to be on two different sites of mine. First of all, Mark Robertson Talks, and then also Carrying Lawn Chairs. And the Carrying Lawn Chairs site is largely about youth and parenting and things along those lines. It's named after my book, Carrying Lawn Chairs, Youth Sports and Other Parental Mindsets. And each the time I talk about it, the first part of the book deals with all the problems I have with organized youth sports for kids 12 and under. And I don't think they're having fun. I think it's about the parents. I mean, it's dysfunctional. Children are not little adults. You have all these kids on a baseball field in their uniforms, and the parents in the stands screaming, and they think it's like the major leagues. It's not the major leagues. Again, I think in some way, a lot of ways, it's harmful for kids. They're not having fun, but they think they should be having fun because this is what their parents want them to do, and they want to do what their parents want them to do because they want the love of their parents. And so it's dysfunctional in so many ways, and I'm against it. And I know that's a very minority opinion, but and that doesn't mean I don't want kids playing sports. They can play pickup games. That's where they have fun. That's where they learn how to play. That's where they learn how to compete. And if dads want to play with them, that's fine. They could do that with their dads. But they won't have parents screaming at them in the stands. It's crazy. It's a dysfunctional scene in this country. And the second part of the book deals with all sorts of other issues related to young people and some of the obstacles they face and the many bad things being pushed their way, perversion, drugs, and so much else. And the government schools overall, in my opinion, are harmful for kids. This is why homeschooling is so great, and that's basically how kids were taught before the turn of the 18th to the 1900s. And John Dewey and his communist buddies came in. They wanted to make them indoctrination centers, and that's what they have become. Now we can't even have God in school. So that's what I talk about there. And the kids these days face many obstacles. And I told you it's going to be on two different sites, and I think it's appropriate for both of them. And again, I'm on Rumble. My Carrying Lawn Chairs is on YouTube as well, and also on BitChute, and I'm on X too. I don't know anything about this technology, but I put them on there and see what happens. But anyway, the title of my show today is called Bead Lady. Now, what I'm talking about today is that every one of us are different, and we have something that we're good at. God doesn't leave anybody out, and we all have sort of a tendency to take who we are for granted. God made everyone a magnificent masterpiece. He didn't leave anybody out. But so often kids go to school and they don't have an easy time in school, and they think there's something wrong with them, and that they're told that they're lazy or not going to amount to anything if they don't bear down and focus and all this other stuff. And the harder they try, the worse it gets. I was there myself. But anyway, I have a job now where I work at a facility, and we have events there. And one of the events is the city market, and they have mostly it's produce from farmers, and others make bread and things like that. But they also have crafts, and we have it now in the summertime. We have it on Wednesdays, afternoons, and evenings, and on Saturdays. And this one lady, she makes jewelry, and she's always usually the first one there, and I got to be there to help set things up and do that. So on Saturdays, I just kind of walk by her booth and say hello, and I didn't even know her name, but I didn't pay much attention to what she sold. It was jewelry, and I had no interest in that. And but since she was the only one there, I was kind of looking at her stuff, and I go, "This really is amazing." And she has these bracelets that they just look like material, but they're not. They're these really small beads. And I asked her, what is this? How do you make them? She says, well, they're beads, and I put them on fishing line, and then I attach them, and I think there's some sort of technique to make them stay together. I don't know if it's a certain type of glue or whatever. I go, beads? I don't even see the beads, and they're minute. And she puts these beads together one at a time and makes these bracelets. Now, some of them are pretty high dollar, over $100. And I go, what? How does a human being do that? She says, oh, I love doing it. It relaxes me. I go, oh my, you could pay me $1 million and I couldn't do that. And she says, oh, anyone can do it. Now, that is the thrust of my show today. We all have talents that we take for granted. And she says, oh, anybody can do this. And she says, it's relaxing. I enjoy it. And she makes these other things, earrings, and I guess, what else do you have? Necklaces she makes. And, but these bracelets are what really intrigued me, how she makes them with these little beads. And it was genius. I mean, like I say, I couldn't begin to even know how to begin to start. So I couldn't be trained to do that. You can't be trained to do anything. I mean, you can be trained, but you have to have a knack for it. And it was beautiful. And what I'm saying is that everybody has a talent like that. Something that they think, oh, everybody can do it, but no, they can't. And we take ourselves for granted that we have just, no, we're not, nothing special about us. We can't do anything. And we got to go to college and work hard and now there's nothing wrong with that if you do something that you are designed to do and want to be involved in. But the idea, and I'm not saying things are easy, but the idea that everybody's the same and it's just a matter of the hardest workers are the most successful, and it's kind of a lie. I mean, I'm not against putting a great effort towards something if it's in the arena that God has given you gifts. And I truly believe that. God gives everybody gifts. He calls people to do things, to use the gifts He has given them. And this lady had an ability to work with minute things. And these little, I mean, I'd like to watch her do that sometime. It would be amazing. And that would be, you could sell that itself. I think she does do a little bit of work there when she's there, but not much. But that would be amazing to see. But she has these gifts, and I told her it was a miracle. They go, what you do is amazing, and she just like no one ever really told her that much. She was really kind of moved by it, and before that she was a lady that kind of complained a little bit about things and stuff like that. But I've noticed since I complimented her on her beautiful work that she's kind of changed herself. So she had the feeling that anybody can do this, and she does. She's not young. I would guess at least upper 70s, and she does this. It's just amazing, and that's my point. Everybody has something like that they can do. God didn't leave anybody out, and it's so many get beaten down. They're told you're not adequate. You're not going to amount to anything unless you do these things these certain ways. And they squash the gifts. This is why I'm against organized sports for kids. It gets them out of being who they are. They're not having fun. I told this story a while back. This guy who I also work with at this job at an event center, he's in charge of doing, he did have a job. He does other things now. He's the head of the farmers market, but he did have his previous job. He organized sports leagues. And during the China virus, they had a rule. They wouldn't let parents watch the games. They would still play the games, but the parents couldn't be in the stands. And he told me those games were not totally different, but there was a great difference in how the kids played, and they had more fun, and they were more relaxed playing, and they were having a good time. I still don't think it's an ideal situation, but it just shows that it's just functional. Organized youth sports is dysfunctional. It gets kids away from being who they are. And this is my point. You see a 1, 2, 3-year-old child, they never are bored. They always know what they want to do next. Now, sometimes the parents need to have boundaries and tell them like that, but then they'll do something else. They'll go, I have a bunch of nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, and just watch them. And you sit there, and they do this, and then they go over here and do this, and then they do this, and then they want to go outside, and then they do all these other things, and they climb up the steps, and then they go here, go there. They never stop, and they're never bored. Who we were as a young child is who we still are by our overall design. Now, we learn things growing up. We got to be responsible. We drive a car. We got to pay our bills. We got to take care of wherever we live and other things. But you're still basically the same person who you were at age 3. You know what you want to do, but we get it all covered up by all this stuff put into our brains on how we're inadequate. If we don't do this right, if we go to school, we have troubles in school. Well, you're just an inadequate person, and you're always going to be inadequate. No, every person has gifts from God. We've talked about the story. Thomas Edison, when he was in early grade school, and they told him, his mom, they sent a note home that your son, he just isn't going to be able to make it in school. He's too slow, he can't pay attention, and there's really no point in keeping him in school. I guess this was before the days of mandatory schooling. But anyway, his mom took the note, and her son was curious, and she says, this note says something along the lines that your son is very gifted, and he's much more gifted than the rest of the students, and he's going to do great things in this world and accomplish great things for the world. And I'm not even paraphrasing it, but that's the general gist of what she said. And so that gave him a positive outlook on the world, or really gave him confidence that he could do great things. If she would have read the actual note, he could have spiraled downward and said, I'm just that. Well, he goes and changes the world, invents the light bulb, and so many other things. I mean, he says it took him over 2,000 times to come up with a proper way to make the light bulb. And he didn't look at it as 2,000 failures. He looked at it as 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And so it's a perspective as well. But every person, like I say, when you're in school, they divided into slow groups and fast groups, I guess. And I was always kind of in the slow group. And so you get that. You're told, that you're never going to amount to anything. And you got to work harder. And you got to bear down and all this. Well, again, I'm not against people being successful in school. We need accountants. We need other people who do that. But not everybody is cut out for school. Or at least the way school is taught now. So many kids are successful in homeschooling. That's because the parents can teach it in an individualized way. But in schools, everybody's taught the same, it seems like. And that's just, it doesn't work. And it's about education. The word education means to bring out. And that's what we have to do. Bring out who these kids are and who we are. And we got to continually remind ourselves that we're a magnificent masterpiece of God here on earth to do what we're called to do with our talents that God gives us. And so many people don't look at it that way. They think, work's got to be drudgery. And I'm not saying it's not tough. I mean, farmers have a tough job. People work in factories. But, even people have a job like that. I've mentioned the company Toyota and the other Japanese companies, Honda and others. They have a system where people who work there on the lines, on the mass production line, they are part of the planning on how to improve and make cars. And any one of them can stop the line. You don't have to have a supervisor do it. They're all basically on the same level, or nearly the same level as the person who runs the place, the CEO. And they have input in how these cars are made. And the great ideas come from these guys on the line. And people who work can be a part of a company like that. I don't care if it's making cars or washing machines or whatever. You should be able to be a part of a company, and you can use your God-given talents to make a better product and keep coming up with ideas, because every product can be improved and can change. and that's where you get the ideas from. But this top-down situation where it is like in other car companies in this country, Ford and GMC and others, they basically, I guess one other, Chrysler, I don't know if it's still called Chrysler or not, but anyway, it's not the same. I know people who work for Ford, and they don't have good things to say about it. But I've toured some Toyota plants, and these guys are all happy, and these are plants that really seem like good places to work. I know there's problems everywhere, but that's what you should be as well. You don't always have to use your talents to do something individualized. You can work for a company, but the company has to be an atmosphere where people contribute, and they contribute who they are, and not just drudgery for 8 hours a day or whatever. Now, again, it's not easy. The people that work in Toyota, it's a challenging job, but they all seem happy, and it's a good way to do things. So I'm saying every person has something to offer. God didn't leave anybody out. And we're all made uniquely. And we have the gifts that God has given us to put forth in this world who we are. This world needs us, and it needs everyone. You know, you hear about the division of labor, Adam Smith. Well, and how they make a pencil. There's a great story about the pencil. And the Foundation for Economic Education, I believe, came out with that. And all that goes into producing a pencil. You've got the paint. Who makes the paint? You got the lead. You got the wood. You got the metal. You got the rubber. And all these companies do this separately and come together. And the people who do these separately, they don't even know each other. But they do this, and they're part of it. And then finally, the company that puts all this together and makes the pencil. And then you have the distributors and the stores that sell the pencils, too. So it's what this country is. This country needs all of us. And I don't care. In the free market is where you can use your talents. And it's maybe easier said than done. I mean, if you want to be an artist or a singer, well, probably the best way to go about that is start painting or start singing. You don't worry about the money right away. And I don't make any money doing this. I just enjoy doing it and have a message that I want to get out. And hope that people can see it, because it seems like in the world there's so many unhappy people. And I think a lot of it has to do with people are not doing what they're meant to do, who they're called to be, using the talents that God gave them. It's like that you know, you hear all these things, that, all the stuff that get taught in college, all this nonsense. College, you know, parents want to send their kids to college. The idea is to send your kid to college, get a good education, and get a job, and get a good job. Well, that works for some people, but a lot of people it doesn't work for. I heard a story a couple days ago about a guy who went to 1 year of college and just says it wasn't for him. And he had this ability or whatever, or a hobby or whatever. He made horseshoes for horses. And it was very small. He'd just make a few of them, and I guess for a few people he'd basically give them away. But he had a knack where he'd go out and he'd look at the horse as the horse moved around. And he noticed that he said every horse is different on their gait and how they walk, and they would need different horseshoes. So on a very small basis, he started making these horseshoes for a few people with their horses, and people really liked them. And word got about, and there was more demand, and he made more horseshoes, basically one-man operation. But long story short, he now has a business making horseshoes. I think it said he employed 30 people now. And it's what he was in and what really fascinated him, what he was drawn to. And it's almost like you have to do it, to what you have to do to keep your sanity. And a lot of people work with their hands, and that helps them keep their mental acuity level, I guess. And because we can't just sit and do nothing. You have to be active in something. And be active in what God calls you to do, and that settles your mind. You have so many people dealing with anxiety and depression. I think that also has a lot to do with not being what you're called to do, because we get the message from the world that if you're not doing this and you're not doing that, and you don't do well in school and all this other stuff, that you're lacking or you're inadequate or you're not going to amount to anything. And that is so wrong. Now, that is not saying that people can just slough off and not do it. You got to bring that out. And it's often not easy. It's like birthing who you are, and birthing is painful sometimes. All the time, I guess. But it's finding who you are and going on that track. And again, kids always know who they are. You're the same person you were when you were 2 or 3, the same basic design. And kids always know what they wanted to do. But when you get to be an adult, for some reason, we're covered with so much garbage and brainwashing growing up that we lose who we are. And that's why I'm against organized youth sports for kids. They get away from who they are because it's just about pleasing the parents, and it's not having fun. And you got to be who you are and play. Play is so important for kids. A lot of parents think it's a waste of time. Well, it's time they get involved in something. We got to get involved in something because they've got to learn discipline and all this. Well, no, let them play. Don't get kids involved in stuff when they're 3 years old. Let them play. That's what they do. They're not going to be behind anybody. Well, if you don't start them real young, they're going to, not have a chance in this world. No, if you start them real young, they're going to get away with their chance in this world. Let them play. Let them be a child for as long as they can be a child. And that's who they are. That's who they want to be. And let them be that. Yes, there's boundaries. Yes, there's imperfect situations. Yes, homes are crazy. Yes, the family is under attack always, and because it's the foundation of society. And but every person, God didn't leave anyone out. We're all here. We have talents that God calls us to use, and we got to get in the mode of doing that. Now, sometimes you have to do a job just to pay some bills, but get in the mode of doing who you are and what the world calls you to do. I'm not even worried about making money yet. It's just do. And this is what God calls you to do. Do it and see what happens. And good things will happen. And if they don't, we'll just try something, change it a bit, or do something differently a bit. But don't worry about failure. You don't fail. Just keep doing it. And but be who you are. This takes away stress, and you'll probably get some heat from some people because they get unsettled by people being who they are. Everybody puts on a false front. I remember the late great Charlie Kirk. I think there was a study done that most people want their kids to be graduating from college, not for the benefit of the kids, but so they can tell other people that their kid is a college graduate. There's so much of that. There's so many people that spend so much money to impress people or to get things they don't really need. I'm not for people not getting nice things or having nice houses. That's great. It really helps the economy. People are builders. Builders are people who do that. That's a talent. And so that be who you're called to be. And don't look at work as just enslavement every day. If you're in a situation like that, it's time to be looking to change. Be something that brings you out where you want to be, where you want to be a part of it. Like I say, if you want to work for a company, a huge company, I don't know, they make air conditioners or they make something, be a part of it. There's always areas to improve in these products. And you hear about companies, we've talked about this before too, that they want to do things, well, they want things to break, like air conditionings, I just said. I talked to a guy who worked on the one where I live, and he said the new ones are made just to not last. The old ones, they're still here 35 years later. But the new ones don't last that long because they want to sell more air conditioners. Well, don't be a part of that. Be a part of something that will last, quality, and use your mind to make it better, to have more quality in it. And you using your talents in mechanical things. People take that for granted as well. I mentioned my brother. I have a brother that's passed away, but he could take a car motor apart and put it back together. But in school, he didn't do that well, left-handed, all these other things you get accused of being, dyslexic and ADD, and all they want to do is drug them because there's something wrong with them. No, there's nothing wrong with them. That's who they are. they're needed. Everybody is needed. And I'm sure that even though he knew he could take a motor apart, he says, well, anybody can do that. No. Well less than 1% of the world could do that. And so I think along the way he was maybe got the idea he was inferior and started drinking. And it was not a good ending, but a lot of people are that way. They feel inferior about themselves because they've been told that they didn't meet the ordinary requirements of being good in school and all these other things. And again, I'm not against people being good in school. Some people have a knack for that as well in the current structure. But again, homeschooling is good because it can bring out individuals, and the parents or who's ever doing the homeschooling can teach people individually. That's why people learn better in one-room schoolhouses than they do in these big campuses right now in high school and things like that. But my main point is that we're all different. We're called to do different things, and when we're doing them, we're energized by it too. If you're not energized by your work, there's a problem. And it might even be that you're in the right work, but in a bad setting where people don't bring forth your talents, and look for that as well. And all these other, wow, we're all competing for these one jobs. That's good. Some people can work for corporations, and that's good. But even these corporations should be broken down into smaller parts, and they can be still kind of like small businesses. And people put their minds together, and the minds of the group all coming up with something can greatly improve the product. Like I say, that's what Toyota does. There's a book called The Toyota Way. Check that out. It's amazing what they do in these companies, how sophisticated they are, and it's about the people who build the cars, and that they bring out the best in the people, and they have certain ways to do that, and they're always working on improving those as well. So it's not, you can't go and just work on the line, you got to do this drudgery all day. You actually have to be a part of it to be motivated, and that's why the companies that don't do that have problems. And but we ask, what if I don't know who I am? I'm been bombarded my whole life with people telling me this or telling me that, or you're not going to do this right, you're not doing that right, you're on the wrong track. Well, what do you do? Well, you have to somehow get back to who you are, who you were born to be. And literally, when you were 2 or 3 years old, that's who you were. And we got to get back to that mindset. It's still in there somewhere. Some people do it by writing and things like that. We have that inner child work and all that. I'm not against that, but we still have that person in us, who we are, and it wants to do certain things. It has desires. It has to do certain things, and but there's also some instruments that can help you. I have found one. It's called the Colby Corporation. I have nothing to do with them. I don't make a dime for saying this, but it's in Arizona, and there was a lady, Kathy Colby, who basically founded the company. She basically came up with all this on her own. Her dad was kind of in a business similar to it, but the Colby concept, the Colby A index, and it really kind of opens your mind and your eyes up to who you really are. And very simply, I mean, there's a book. This was our first. She didn't write many books, but the Colby conative connection. She measures conation, which is how you instinctively do something, or what you will instinctively do or be attracted to. And she divides people into 4 categories: fact finder, follow through, quick start, and implementer. Now, you're not just one of those. You're a certain degree in every one of those. And say, I think it's 1 to 10, and if you're a 10, well, you have certain abilities, like the fact finder. That means you're good in details. You could be an accountant or something like that. Follow through, you're good at spreadsheets or design and things like that. And quick start, these are the guys who see the big picture and want to go and just get things done and want to see the bottom line. And the other people are the ones who fill in the blanks and try to keep them on track in the right direction. And then the implementer. The implementer people are the ones who have to work with their hands, who have to do something. And these are the people that, the ones that play golf every weekend because they got to be doing something, or the ones that build houses, or carpenters, or plumbers, or electricians. They've got to be doing something with their hands. And so we're not all called to basically do things with their hands. And some of them people are called to be leaders. And we told the story about Walt Disney. He was in Kansas City, the area I'm in, and he had a cartoon business, but it basically went bankrupt, or went out of business, and he had not much money and not many possessions, so he put his possessions in a little suitcase, had $40, and got on a train to California, Los Angeles area, and he didn't know a soul out there. He went in and applied for a few jobs being director of them in some of these studios. He'd never had any experience in it, but long story short, he got Disney going and made quality products and videos for family viewing. And then he had his theme park, Disneyland, and but he had the ideas and he wanted to push them forward. But he had a brother, Roy, who was more of the accountant and the very practical person, and he kind of kept things on track with Walt, with all his many ideas and many directions he wanted to go. Now sometimes Walt ignored his brother, and it worked out anyway. But you kind of need both in a venture like that. And companies need people, all four of these, and there's different degrees. I mean, you might be like a 1 in fact finder, or 2, and you might be higher in follow through. There's infinite numbers of combinations, and they kind of suit you to who you are. And I really found this enlightening when I took it, and it's good company. I mean, it's Kathy Colby who founded it, and again, she passed away about a year ago probably. And she's on video, YouTube. You could just Kathy Colby and watch what she talks about. And she does one interview. I think it's over an hour, and you'll see them there on YouTube. When you Google Kathy Colby on YouTube, and tells you what it's about. And they do have some, I guess you would call them tests, but they're very simple. You take, and it kind of tells you who you are. It gives you your numbers. I was very high in Quick Start and very low on about everything else. So, and that's why I have trouble with all the details and everything like that. But you can kind of see directions you want to go, but not sure how you're going to get there. But anyway, I find that very valuable, and to learning who you are and the directions you want to take, because no, God didn't leave anybody out. We're all here for a reason, and you actually see your work can be your altar, and that be how you praise God and doing by what God calls you to do. Not everybody's called to be a minister or a priest or a rabbi or whatever. You can still do God's work. You can do God's work being an auto mechanic. That's another skill. It's, oh my gosh, and these new cars and how they build. That's another thing. They build these cars, and I mean, Toyota's great and others, but some of these cars they build, you think that they can only be fixed at the dealers who charge an arm and a leg to fix them. And they change all the time, but those guys are amazing on what they know and how they fix the cars. And then you hear people, well, they rip me off. Well, maybe that means they're not supposed to be in the auto car business. I think many of the problems in the world are people who are not doing what they're called to do. And you see all these people that, I saw a thing today where I can't believe this number is right, but it said, and I'm almost scared to say it. I thought it said 100 million people aren't working who could be working. These are adults. These aren't senior citizens. And I told myself, well, why would they not want to work? Why would they not want? Do they just want to sit home and watch TV all day? How are they living? Of course, they're living off welfare. And but I think they are probably people who have been told all along that they're somehow inferior and inadequate, and they're never going to amount to anything. And so they just better settle for a low life. And everybody has gifts to offer this world. Nobody was left out. But I think that's a reason for it. And of course, the welfare state, the Democrats like that, they can keep people under control. They don't want people knowing that they have gifts to be used. They want to keep people down. And so they depend on the government. It's just so sad. I think that's many problems in many of the problems in our country are caused by people not knowing who they are, what they're called to do, and doing that. And that's where God wants us to be, and doing what He called us to do. And if you're doing that, you feel better about yourself. You get all these people taking anxiety and depression medication. I think a lot of that is that they're not doing what they're called to do. They're in a job where they're Oh, I need to keep this job for healthcare. That's another thing. That's another thing right there. They know that government healthcare is going to cost a lot more, and we're going to keep people trapped in jobs and keep them down. Don't let them be who they are. We got to change all that as well. There are ways to do that, but it's we got to be who we are. Whether you're a one-man operation making pottery, or whether you're working for a big company like Toyota, to express who you are and be a part of the team there to make cars better. Be who you are. Do who you are. You're a magnificent masterpiece of God. God has a plan for you. And the plan is to do things that energize you. If you're in the right field, you're energized by going to work. It's not Monday, oh, I got to go to work. Now, nothing's easy. There's a challenge to everything. But it's just not a matter of always working hard. I'm not even sure what that means. People tell people you're lazy and you don't work hard. I don't. That's something different. I mean, like I say, we talked about the Bead Lady. I could work as hard as I wanted. I mean, as hard as possible to try to put these beads together and make these bread. I couldn't do that. So it's giving an effort in the arena that God calls you to be in. And if it's not working, you're probably in the wrong arena. Now, it could be that it's just a bad place and people aren't treated right as well, but you can find an arena to use your God-given gifts in the free market. The free market is natural law, and that's the best way for society to operate. And it's the best way to help people. There's poor people, and they're also, in my opinion, don't know who they are. They're not doing what they're called to do. It's so much dysfunction. But be who you are, and that's how we improve society. Everybody has something to offer, and offer it. Don't be afraid to offer it. And sometimes it even takes courage, because there's some crazies out there. And a lot of people don't like it because they see you happy and fulfilled and loving life. They don't like that. They think, oh, well, you got to do this work. You got to be miserable in your work. Do something you're called to do. It's not easy, but you can get the feeling that you're in the right place. And this lady that makes those beads, she's in the right place. She loves it. It relaxes her amazingly. Find something like that. God didn't leave anybody out. Find something and keep looking until you think you're at the place God wants you to be. And so, we thank you for joining us this time on both Mark Robertson Talks and on Carrying Lawn Chairs. Be who you are. Thank you for joining us.